Okay, today I'd like to get started on our shooting mechanics, which is going to involve doing a raycast. Now we're going to use projectiles, but you have to have, or you should have, a raycast to at least tell where your camera is looking. In video games, for the most part, if you have a centralized crosshair, you're always shooting toward the center of the screen. So we need to find out where that's at, because it doesn't know. You have to make that calculation. Unless you had, of course, a moving crosshair, which is a highly advanced thing, but we may eventually do. We probably will do. I'm trying to think of games that have it. The thing that comes to mind is like GoldenEye, where, if you remember that one, where you can move the crosshair around with the sniper rifle, things like that. But it also can be used for if you're in a third-person shooter, say, and this could also be the case in first-person, because we're doing both. If you walk right up to something, you notice how the crosshair is in the middle of the screen, but you would hit this cube here. Well, if you look at games, they'll actually move that crosshair so it's on the cube rather than straight ahead of you. But that's a highly advanced feature. We'll eventually get there. But for right now, we're just going to work on getting the ability to know where the center of the screen is at in relation to the muzzle of our weapon. Okay, so there's a few things we have to get in place first. The first thing is going to be that we need to get our input. So go over to your project settings. If you didn't have that open, just go over to settings, project settings, and slide down to your input, and you're going to do an action mapping. And then we're going to call this one fire. Okay, and I would go ahead and use your left mouse button, because that's just how they all are. You don't really need to save. I do it anyway. Go into your third-person character, edit blueprint, open blueprint editor. And if you noticed, I have cleaned things up. I promise I didn't do any sort of new calculations or anything weird like that, but I did clean stuff up and I added comments. So that way we knew what we were doing. So let's find a nice blank spot, right-click, type in fire, and there's our event. Now, pile and save. Before we do anything with our weapon, we want to make sure we have a weapon, okay? Because all these calculations are going to be based off of the muzzle of the weapon. So if you remember, we made a reference to that when we spawned it, and we called it spawned weapon. So you can either drag over from here, or you can right-click and say get spawned weapon. We just simply want to check if it's valid. If I could type, that would help. There we go. Choose the one with the question mark. Okay? So basically, it's saying if it does exist, you want to be there. If you tried to fire and we're making reference to this, because you're going to try to make reference to the muzzle, it wouldn't do anything. So I just said it made reference to the muzzle. So first off, your project, your weapon you're using may or may not have the muzzle component. It's actually a part of the skeleton. So I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. Go to your third-person example map. Go to, let's say, where did we put third-person? Okay, go into your blueprints, remember. Let's say weapon. If you go into your weapon pickup master, I believe. Now let's go to, I'm just trying to find the weapons that we were using. So let's see, go to our viewport. So let's say you wanted to find this weapon. Just click on over here, go to your magnifying glass, and it'll bring up that one. See, we had a lot of weapons that came in, and I don't want you to pick the wrong one and get confused. But if you double click on here, and then you go to the skeleton tab, and then you look over here, there's a socket. Remember how we did a socket for our character? Well, you can do a socket for weapons and stuff too. And if you look on there, you got a little component. I'm going to slow down my camera a little bit, down to 2. It's not a component, it's a socket, called muzzle. Now notice that naming, just like in our character thing, our character socket's very important. MUZZLE, capital M. It's very sensitive. Now you can look up, there's tons of tutorials on looking up adding sockets and all that. It's very similar to adding to your character. But anyway, you need to make sure you have this on there, and that each one of your weapons that you're using has this on there, because this is where we're going to reference. Basically, we're going to make a reference to this location. Now, this was already built in, so if you're using the weapon bundle that comes free through the Epic Games, you're going to have this already done for you. No need to worry about it. So just make sure that you do have a muzzle socket. I already went through and checked, and each one of those weapons did come with that attached. If you want to dig through all of your attached weapons, you can. Let me see, where did we put? And here's the other thing. Notice if you go to your, let's see, weapon pickups, and you start looking at the pickups, if you remember, we use static meshes for those. So if you go to the weapon mesh and you're like, oh, okay, there's my weapon, I want to go ahead and check it, see if it has a socket. So you go here and you click on here, and you're like, wait, this doesn't even look anything like what I was just looking at. That's because it's a static mesh. It doesn't have bones, right? So we did that so that way if you wanted to have this thing use gravity, it wouldn't ragdoll and do all sorts of weird stuff. So you remember there's a difference between the skeletal mesh and the static mesh. Make sure you're using the skeletal mesh when you're looking for this. You'll notice because it has a skeleton. How you can tell the difference is skeletal meshes have a pink underline, okay, where static meshes have a blue underline. I'm trying to find that. Probably be easiest to see it in the editor. See, so if you have one like this, you're not on the right one. You're not looking at the right one. You're looking at your pickup as opposed to your weapon actual that we made in earlier tutorials. So that could be a little bit of a hang up. So basically, go through each one of the weapons that you're referencing. Make sure it has a muzzle socket on the end of the weapon. Okay, so let's get going with our character here. So first thing we want to do is we want to calculate our shoot info, and to do that, we need to start with finding out where the camera is looking. So to do that, grab your camera component reference, just drag it from there, and then you have it. What you want to do is you want to get world location, okay? You also want to get the forward vector, okay? Basically, where it's looking forward, where it's pointed forward. And then from these, we're going to calculate what's called a line trace. And you want to select line trace by channel, okay? You want to make sure that this line trace by channel, we're going to say draw debug type, just say for duration. Okay, so what is this, what we're doing? So shooting out a line trace, it's going to be a thing that shoots out, and we're going to tell it to shoot out from the center point of our camera, from our current location, from the camera's current location forward, all right? So the start location is going to be our follow camera, which is the camera in the third person. And this is important when we go to start shooting first person, we're going to have to change this reference, but we'll get to that. So our follow camera, we want to go ahead and that's where the line trace is going to start, okay? Where we want it to end is going to be the forward vector, so it doesn't know how far forward you want to go with this. Like how far do you want to shoot your line trace? So to do that, just drag off of here. And by the way, I believe this is vector, okay? If you break apart this, type break, it has just your X, Y, and Z, and that's your location in 3D space, your X coordinate, your Y coordinate, and your Z coordinate. That's all that a vector is. They just combine it into three nice things, so just like that. And if you had rotation and scale added to this, then you would have your transform. So that's all those are, just more complex things. Like when we were spawning in objects, if you remember. Anyway, getting sidetracked. So go off of here and do Shift 8. That should get you to the star, and then you want to do a vector times a float. And we're going to go ahead and say you want to go, I think it's 10,000. We'll start there, 10,000. I can't remember if it's meters or centimeters or how they do it. We may go larger than that. It depends. We'll start there, 10,000. If we need it to go farther, we will. So anyway, it doesn't, it needs to, you should also incorporate where you're at on your camera. So 10,000 plus what? Well, plus the location of the camera, right? So just go ahead and drag off of here, press plus, and we want to do a vector plus a vector. Okay, so vector plus vector. So you're adding this and this together, and that's going to be our end location. Okay. Now, go ahead and make sure you connect this up. Okay. So going back to over here, our line trace, we want it to go off the visibility channel. Now we're going to make our own channel. Okay. And a channel is simply, there's certain things that you want your line trace to ignore and acknowledge. For example, you don't want it to, when you're doing the line trace from the camera, especially if the camera's behind you, you don't want it to hit your capsule of your character and then register you as the hit object, right? You want to ignore that stuff. So you can set your trace channel to ignore it. You can also add certain things in this actors tree to ignore. And if you notice it's a square like that, that means it's an array, which is a group of things, a list of things. So a quick way to get a reference to yourself is to simply, because you want to ignore yourself, which includes everything, your capsule, all that, anything connected to it, any children, just right click and type in self, and it gets a reference to yourself. Now, if you notice, you are not an array, so you can't connect into here. You simply need to make an array, make array, and then enter. And then that takes, it basically puts you in a little backpack, if you will. And you can add more things by clicking the pin, but we just want one thing for right now, and just add that into there. Now we're going to make it so it ignores, our line trace will eventually be set. We're going to do a custom line trace set to ignore your character here, but this is an extra safe way to make sure that you are definitely ignoring your character. So, okay. So basically, after you go through this, compile, save. It's a good idea to keep saving your work. You only want to make decisions if you actually, if you're actually hitting things, or you're gonna make different decisions based off of that, and that's what that's for. But either way, regardless if you hit something, so let's say you hit an object, you're gonna have an output out of the out hit. But let's say you don't hit anything, and your projectile continues on and on and on. Well, you still need to have some calculations for that, okay? And to do that, we're still going to have to reference that muzzle we talked about. So what we need to do is we need to get a reference to our spawned weapon. So right click and type spawned weapon, get spawned weapon, and you want to cast to it because we're going to need to pull out the reference to it. So cast to weapon actual, and make sure you use your master. Okay, and what do we want to get out of the master? Well, we want to get to that muzzle, but we need to get to the weapon first. Compile, save. Remember, we cast when we want to get into the, remember we called classes cookie cutters? When we want to get into the cookie cutters components, okay? When we want to get into what that class contains. So let's go to our weapon actual. So I have our weapon actual up already, right here. We were just looking at it. Make sure you're in the master, weapon actual master. That way all the children that you made, all the different weapons that you made will retain this. Right now we have a generic name for our weapons mesh. So, you know, I like to customize names that makes things significantly less confusing. So you could say, instead of skeletal mesh, you could F2 this and say, say weapon actual. You could say weapon actual skeletal mesh. Compile, save, save all. Now you know that you are pulling from that. So this is the weapon actual, that thing we were just in. That's what this is representing. And we have our instance of it. That's what this is right here. You couldn't have this without the instance that you're talking about. So if you click, drag off of here, and I believe, what do we call it? Weapon actual. So down here it says get weapon actual skeletal mesh. See, we just made that. Click it, and now we have a reference to that. Okay, now from that we want to get a reference to the socket. So we're going to drag off of here and we're going to say GetSocketLocation. Okay, and if you remember, we were just talking about the muzzle socket. We need to put that in this blank down here, and it needs to be it has to be exact. MUZZLE. Okay, no white spaces, no anything. Okay, now we have a reference to our weapon. We had to have this regardless if we hit anything or not. If we shoot up into the sky, you're still going to want a projectile to fire into the air, and where that thing goes is going to be dependent upon the calculation that we're in the process of doing. So at this point, we need to determine if we hit anything. So we're going to right click and say branch. And the condition is based off the return value. And the return value here is yes or no. Did you hit something? Okay. Now the fun part begins. We get messy here. So get all this blank space out of the way. So out hit, we want to get what we hit. And this is a nice little thing here. So let me go ahead and drag off, and I'm going to break it. Break hit result. Look at all that. You get all this confusing information. And trust me, it's not named how you would think on some of the things, and I'm going to save you probably about an hour of banging your head against the wall. Okay, so we have our hit result. Okay, this is when we hit something. So we really only want to make sure we're referencing these things if we're at a true. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and make a transform from our socket location. So we're going to drag off here and we're going to say make transform. Okay. And remember how I told you you have a vector plus a rotation plus scale, and that's a transform, and that's exactly what we have right here. Now we want to, from here, from our socket location, we want to find our look at rotation. So over here say find look at rotation. This is a complex function here, and it's made by Epic. I didn't make it, so this is very handy. So find out location. Well, relative to what? What we want to do, and this is where you can. This is that part I'm telling you about. That you need to really pay attention to. You need to drag off of here. Make sure you take impact point, not location, which is where you would think. So basically you're calculating where your muzzle is in relation to where your line trace just shot that forward vector to. Okay, so you think your camera is always, because it's the camera, it's always shooting toward the center of the screen if you do a forward vector, right? Straight out of the camera, it's going forward. Well, you want to see, let's say your muzzle's, I'm having trouble getting my fingers in the camera, is over here. Let's say this is the muzzle of your weapon, and you want to see what the angle is from your muzzle to the front of your weapon. And that's going to be your look at rotation. And what we're going to do off of this, we're going to plug it into your transform, and what we're going to do off of this is going to determine what angle the projectile comes out of your weapon. Believe it or not, in most games, the projectile doesn't come straight out of the muzzle like it would in real life. It's angled to go toward the center of the screen. And there's lots of tricks to make it look like, there are guys that know how to angle stuff just right to make it look like it's not angling at all. But it is, in fact, most of the time, going to angle out of the muzzle of the weapon or just in front of the character and go toward the center of the screen. There are some games that will simply spawn the projectile at a point directly in front of the camera so it does not have to move at an angle, but that can cause its own problems. It's a give and take. There's no exact specified way. Some people can, just have preferences over others. But to minimize cheating, since we're going to be doing multiplayer, I don't want people hiding behind walls and doing little tricks like that and spawning the projectile just in front of the camera and it not having to come out of the muzzle, which is a thing you could do if you spawn it in the wrong spot. Long story short, this is the way I'm doing it. You can do it however you want. Scale, we're going to leave it 1. Most of the time, you're not really going to be messing with this. Okay, so based off of if we hit something or not, we're gonna store this value. So go ahead and promote this to a variable. And you can name this a lot of things. You could say shoot to. You could say shoot angle, but it's not really a rotator. I don't want to confuse. So basically, we're just going to say shoot to because it's the direction you're going to be. It's the location and direction you're going to be shooting to. And you want to go ahead and hook it up just like that. Okay. So we have another shoot to calculation we want to make. And it's going to be based off of if you don't hit anything. So first thing we want to do is drag off of here and say MakeTransform. Okay, and so we have a calculation that we have to make. Once again, it's still going to be coming off of your muzzle, so you want to find the lookout rotation based off there. Okay, let's just go ahead and connect it up, but we still have to have our target. Okay, so if we don't hit anything, we're going to be basing that target off of the forward vector. Okay, so think about this. So you, instead of getting your lookout rotation based off of where you hit, because that's where your projectile would be looking, is where you hit, you want it based off of this forward vector, which is a projection way out into space somewhere. You want to make sure that your projectile is moving in that direction. So that's where your FindLookatRotation target comes from. Okay? And so from there, you've made both of your calculations, and you need to set your shoot to info right here. So, all right, drag it off of here, set your shoot to. Just like that. And this is going to be coming out of your false. So if you don't hit anything. Okay? So regardless of how it goes, you want to return this information. Hold on, compile, save all. So you have 2 and you want to bring it down to 1, you're going to use a reference. So go ahead and get it. And right here, this is stored these 2 values. So now you have your reference. Now you just need to plug this into an output node. So what we should probably do is put this down into a function to make it a lot easier to read. So let's see what happens if we get a little risky here and bring all this down. Right click. Can I do it? Let's move this out of the way. Okay. Select it all. Right click, collapse to function, and name it, I don't know, calculate shoot to. Okay, and let's see what mayhem just happened, because inevitably when you do that, it gets all sorts of crazy. Okay, so there's our calculate shoot to. We got our true and our false, and we got here. So okay, so select your input node here. Go down to here and select output and do the drop down. That gets you your transform, and then you're going to say shoot out and delete anything after that. There it is, shoot out, shoot output. That's all I'm saying. Connect this node up here, connect this node up here, and this would be an area where you couldn't connect both of these up to here. So you're just gonna drag this into here just like that, and then there you've calculated your shoot to information. So compile, save, file, save all, and let's go back out here. Okay, we're at a good spot right here. We've done a lot of work. We should probably test what we've done. So let me, you can see we have a ton of stuff open here. Go to your event graph, Okay, so the fire button is pressed. And now we can check if we've actually done something. Now, I have an error, a multiplayer related problem that's about to occur. Do you see what it is? I'm going to press play. At least there should be. If there's not, then Engine's let me get away with murder. Let me go to, actually, let's make this a non-dedicated session. And let's start with our server. That should always work, pretty much. Should always, okay, there you go. See, now there's your line trace. Now this is a debug. We're obviously not going to have red little red things shooting out of our weapon. But what this is doing is it's giving me a reference of where my projectile is eventually going to go. Okay, and if you notice, it's shooting straight out of the camera. That's why all you see is a red speck at first, and you don't see it until you move sideways because it's straight onto the camera. So this is what our projectile is going to use to know where to go, and we're going to spawn it from the muzzle. Okay. So now I escape out of there. I'm going to go to our client and select him, and you're like, why isn't it working? It's because multiplayer sucks. You know, there's always these problems. What's going on? It's a simple replication thing. Make sure your spawned weapon, I hope this is it anyway, do your drop down. Your spawned weapon, the reference needs to be replicated. Compile, save all, press play, shift F1, go to your client, and there you go. Now your client's seeing it. And just to prove that that is working, gonna go into a dedicated session, and we're gonna make sure this works. Got a million different things going on. Okay, client 1, it works. Client 2, it works. Okay, so client 1, client 2 work. Now, these aren't supposed to be seeing each other. Okay, they're not. It's not like, oh, I want to be able to see his line traces and what. We're gonna handle that replication with the actual projectiles and stuff like that. So anyway, that should be good for there. Anyway. In the next videos, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can spawn a projectile based off of that. You're going to be able to base all of your shooting mechanics off of this line trace. I know some games, they just do a line trace. They don't do all of the other things with it. But we're gonna have the line trace and we're going to have the projectile. So that's all there is for today. Thank you.